have several hospital institutions in attendance. We have Brookdale, Brooklyn Hospital Center, Bellevue, Coney Island, Elmhurst, Harlem, Jacoby, Kings County, Lincoln, Metropolitan, North Central Bronx, Queens, Woodhull, Interfaith, Kingsbrook Jewish Medical Center, Long Island Jewish Medical Center, Maimonides, Memorial Sloan Kettering, Montefiore, New York Presbyterian Queens, New York Presbyterian Cornell, New York Presbyterian Brooklyn, Northwell, NYU Langone, SUNY Downstate, and Wyckoff Heights Medical Center. So thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us here to talk about an incredibly important subject, plant-based nutrition. So we are going to start with a introduction by the Borough President. We'll then have a 5-minute video, Forks Over Knives, Forks Over Knives video profile. Then the Brooklyn Borough President will be giving an introduction. We'll have a presentation by Dr. Kim Williams, short Q&A, as well as short presentations by a few nonprofits and for-profits, and then closing comments, and we hope to get everyone up here by 2 p.m. sharp. So without further ado, we will be showing a short video by Forks Over Knives.
I am Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams, and I'm really joined by the true heroes and sheroes. I went to the doctor. He stated, Eric, your diabetes is at a dangerous level. I gotta put you on insulin right away. I had nerve damage in my hands and feet. I lost a lot of my feeling on my right thigh from nerve damage. And during that same time, I was losing sight in my left eye, and the right eye was going out also. And so little did I know that all of those symptoms were indicators that the diabetes had reached a very dangerous level. I don't think anything is more frightening than waking up and you could no longer see the alarm clock. I started out my public service career as a member of the New York City Police Department. I think I had probably the typical police/politician diet. And you know, I love to always end the rumor right away that says cops love donuts. That is not a rumor, it's a fact. I ate all types of donuts, from jelly to cream to glaze. I always exercised, but my diet was horrendous. On the move, as an elected official, as a police officer, I did steady midnight, so it was difficult to find things that were open late at night. So whatever I can get, I would grab and, just munch on, bad food habits. What was amazing is that not one doctor that I visited said anything about nutrition and food. The Forks Over Knives plan was just so helpful when I read the entire book, and I needed that plan. Cleaning out my cupboards, what to remove, looking at the list of things that you can eat, understanding the power of foods and what they do. And all of that information just made me so smart. In 3 weeks, my eyesight cleared up when I changed my diet. In 3 months, all the nerve damage was gone, the ulcer was gone, all of those symptoms that I had associated with my diabetes disappeared.
How old are you again?
57.
And you have the kidney function of a 30-year-old. Your sugars look good. They're normal. Your 3-month sugar, your A1C, has gone from 17 to 5.7. And that's now with no medication. Your inflammation is non-existent. And inflammation is a key factor also in diabetes and the risk for heart attack.
In the past, my entire meal was built around my life. Now my life is built around my meal. I chop up my kale, my carrots, my other items that I'm going to use, and I leave them in bags in the fridge. And so when it's time for me to make a meal, I just take a handful of each and put it all together. 90% of the things that I eat is because I cook. I'm in control of what I eat, and no one else is in control of that. It's so important for me to keep my energy levels up. Early today, I had a protest with private housing, that people were being left out. Then I had a meeting in public housing where some public residents was having problems. Then I have my staff meeting with my team and keep them abreast. I have a public event tonight with those who want to look at vegan/plant-based lifestyle. I have 2 dinners that I have to attend to actually entertain my Chinese guests that came from out of the country. So if my energy level is not up, I'm not able to deal with the issues that people are having and continue to build those international bridges that I look to do. We can save more lives with plant-based diet if people will only realize they are enslaved to fats, oil, sugar, and things that are killing their body.
And we're going to make sure that we allow our children to have healthy food. It's not a motto, it's a reality. We're going to raise healthy children and families in the borough of Brooklyn and in the city of New York.
When you have a chronic disease, it cripples your entire family. And if I could teach families how not to go through that and just experience life where their family members are not experiencing Alzheimer's, where grandparents can't identify their grandkids, and families are going through chemotherapy, and mothers are dealing with asthma. If I can do that, if I can change that, that is the end of the chapter. And I mean, I had a great life.
Rachel and Atalia in my office here, they are 2 just amazing staffers, and they just embrace this entire philosophy of really changing how we think. And what we're doing here around making families healthy is just really warms my heart, and changing just the thought pattern. How we have a lactation room downstairs so mothers can breastfeed with the level of dignity that they deserve. How we make this building a menopause-friendly environment. How do we deal with feminine products and give it to those women who are dealing with economic challenges so that they can at least have those basic items. Fighting against processed meat in our schools. Processed meat, as you know, is a type 1 carcinogen, yet we serve 980,000 meals a day to our babies, knowing that it's going to cause long-term injury. We're doing it one item at a time, one act at a time, and we have some amazing partners. I see Dr. Osfeld is here, Dr. McMacken. The first plant-based unit clinic in the oldest hospital in America, Bellevue Hospital, is going to take off, where a patient is going to come into the hospital. If they have a chronic disease, they can go to a plant-based unit and receive the treatment that they deserve, thanks to Dr. McMacken and her push to make this happen. This is so exciting, what we are doing and what we are moving towards. My amazing doctor that I have here in Brooklyn, who's here, Dr. Denea, a plant-based doctor who's treated me, also treated my mother. My mother has 6 children. She loves them all, but she adores me. And this journey started for me when I saw Mommy inject herself with insulin, and I remember sitting in that driveway like it was yesterday, leaving the house. I saw her inject herself over the 7 years, but for some reason, I really saw it. And I said, God, I want to do something for Mommy. I'm not a doctor, but I'm tired of my mother on high blood pressure medicine for 57 years, heart disease medicine, insulin, several forms of diabetes medicine, not getting better. And when I got those symptoms, unbeknown to me that I was diabetic at the time. Sister just was diagnosed with breast cancer. My oldest sister lost a kidney to diabetes. My brothers are pre-diabetic. Knowing that our family is going through this and there's a level of helplessness, and to be able to turn it around and watch mother in 2 months get off insulin was an amazing feeling for me. And now she's the matriarch of the family, so the entire family, and I told her, I said, Mother, if you can do it at 80, now all of your children are going to follow. And we can turn around the lives of people. And I say it over and over again. It was never our DNA, it was our dinner. It wasn't where we were born, it was our breakfast. It's not our lineage, it's our lunch. And when you change that mindset and start embracing, the closer we get to a whole food, plant-based diet. Not everyone is going to make a complete reversal. Some people's going to take time. Food is crack and heroin on steroids. If you try to think that a person is just going to change the cultural brainwashing of their belief that they need the food in their lives that they're eating is going to happen overnight, it's not. We have to meet people where they are. We need to make sure our nutritionists are on board, our behavioral scientists are on board, our doctors are on board, the institutions are on board. We must do things that allow people to embrace this full concept. We must bring our ministers in synagogues and Buddhist temples and houses of worship to give people the moral support that they need. You can't do this journey on your own. It's not possible to do it on your own for the masses of people. There's so much help we need. They're bombarded. By the time they walk outside their door, they're bombarded with fast food and junk food. They're given the rumors that if you try to go whole food plant-based, it's too expensive, it's too time-consuming, that it can never happen, that it's naturally that you're going to get older and you're going to incur these diseases. There's nothing you can do about it. They're all lies. The greatest betrayal in medicine, I believe, is what has happened to the medical professionals in this country. As children, you walked around with stethoscopes trying to operate on your cat and your little brothers and sisters, hoping one day you will grow up to save lives. And you know it better than I. You're watching the slow decline of your patients. They start off with metformin, then they 3 medicines later, then it's insulin, then it's headed to dialysis, loss of sight, limb amputation. It must crush you, those of you who are in this profession. Go through medical schools. No one is teaching nutrition. They're only teaching you how to treat symptoms, how to prescribe another medicine. The drug dealer is not the guy standing on the corner wearing blue jeans. It's the one that has the pharmaceutical suitcase wearing 3-piece blue suits and having our families hooked on drugs that we know will never deal with their incidents that they're dealing with in their health crises that they have. And as I said in that video, a chronic disease hijacks your life. You're worried about the next test. You're worried about, am I going to have to put the family in hospice? Who's going to take mother to dialysis this week? 3 times a week, 3 hours a day. It destroys you. It rips everything apart. Your family's no longer the same. Not only the person who's going through it, but the caregiver. It's traumatizing. It's PTSD as you go through that traumatic experience of a loved one going through a chronic disease. We can turn it around. I'm so excited. I thought my legacy was going to be my policing career. It's no match for what we're going to do around health. We're going to change the way Americans think about health. It's going to start here in Brooklyn, cascade throughout the entire country, and deal with the global crisis of healthcare. We need you. We need you to take small steps. Meeting this Mondays in your hospitals, allowing doctors to have conversation about nutrition. Compelling the industry to bring those who are thoughtful in the room, who have proven results, and find a solution. Change this discussion from treating symptoms to reversing disease. No one does it better and say it better than our guest today. Part of my research, reading what Dr. Williams is doing, just made me excited to have him here in the Borough of Brooklyn and have a conversation with his colleagues and peers. You know him. You know how knowledgeable he is and what he has done in the field of medicine. And to have him here to talk with you and see how do we start the process of turning this ocean liner around to move in the next direction. I cannot be more thankful to have him fly in this morning. He's flying out this afternoon, but he wanted to come and be a part of this experience. This is only the beginning. And hopefully we can convince him to understand, as I always say, there's only two types of Americans, those who live in Brooklyn, those who wish they could. We'll ask him to move and be part of our team. The great hospitals like Downstate, Kings County, Methodist, and all the others, to be part of this team as we start this journey. So I'm asking you to give your attention to a great medical leader, a good person with a good heart, and want to ensure that our hearts keep ticking. Dr. Kim Williams.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. That really was truly amazing. Great, and I've got so this is a very unusual position for me. I speak all over all the time. I don't think I've ever felt so superfluous because that was an amazing experience, an amazing journey. And I've been a baseball fan for almost all of my life. I'm trying to figure out how does somebody hit a grand slam from the leadoff position? Just did. And please give them a hand. So my task here, I'm relegated to supporting everything you just said. Okay. So I'm going to give you a lot of the data that goes behind, what this movement should really be about. And I'm hoping that you can take some of these scientific pearls. People ask me, what to eat. I don't know. I know what not to eat, and it's all based on the medical literature. So I'm going to probably give you very few, if any, opinions, and just share with you a lot of the data behind what's happening in the United States and why we should be moving in the direction that our VP just talked about. A little bit of an outline, but I'll try to get through most of these points and give you the background on where we need to be. But what most of you already know is that heart disease has been a major thing. What I don't have on this slide is how long. You might, some of the historians in the group might remember that at the end of World War I, there was a Spanish flu epidemic. It was from 1918 to 1920. It was so horrific. Millions of people dying around the world, 650,000 people died in the United States. For 1918, it took us meaning cardiology, out as the #1 cause of death. It was back by 1919 as the #1 cause. So we're now at 100 years in a row. And so the question we have to ask ourselves is, how long are we going to put up with this? Now, if you look at this from an economic point of view, if you look at it from ethnic disparities, it has every marker that says something that we ought to be about changing. Now, supporting what our VP just said, our doctors are complicit in this, in that we've been curing people, we think. And so if you look at a curve like this, it looks like we've been doing a really good job. This is the death rate from heart disease. And you're looking at about a 70% decrease over a 4-decade period. And it's bypass surgery, it's statins, it's development of implantable defibrillators, heart failure drugs, doing a tremendous job, okay? With a couple problems. Number one, If you're African American, it doesn't exactly apply to you, okay? And that decrease that you're seeing, this is from the CDC a few weeks ago. The African American population, most people I think they were looking at it vertically and looking at how many hundreds of people die per year if they're African American. I'm looking at it horizontally. How long does it take our community to catch up with everyone else? It's about 11 years. So that it's going down, but it's going down slow. The other problem is that everything I just talked about is mopping up the floor instead of turning off the faucet. The other aphorism that came out the other day was from actually Dr. Burkitt, who's been famous for Burkitt's lymphoma. He's saying that, we spend a lot of time sending ambulances to the base of the cliff where people have fallen off, and not enough time building fences at the top of the cliff. So at some point we have to wake up and do some prevention. Now, the call for prevention was actually sent out by the CDC last year. This was the nadir, 167 in 2015, deaths from cardiovascular disease per 100,000 residents in the United States. The next year was 168.5, and it's continued to increase. So that decrease, that great, fantastic ability to save lives is going away. Why? They say it's the obesity epidemic and the incidence of diabetes increasing dramatically. It has to do with people not understanding these 7 little principles that have been out for a while from the American Heart Association. Everyone needs to have their body mass index less than 25, needs to be doing exercise at least 150 minutes per week, not smoking, knowing what your cholesterol and having it controlled, eating a heart-healthy diet, and of course I put that in green letters, and knowing that your blood pressure is less than 120, and hemoglobin A1C, like our BP, less than 5.7%. Well, how many of us actually do that? Don't show me the hands. How many people have, just tell yourself, how many have all 7? And what can you do to get yourself there? If we do that, it would tremendously improve our society, because right now it's about 3% of all Americans. Okay, and this is our problem. Or this was our problem. This is actually this is a CDC slide. It's getting a little old now, just because everybody understands that this is our marketing and our systems of advertising all point to larger meals. We have people who have very little ability to resist what's going on. They're taught to eat this way, and it feels good. Healthy dining is hard. They're big meals, refined grains, the red meat, unhealthy fats, sugary drinks, not enough fruits and vegetables, not enough nuts, grains. And then there's this. Any football fans here? Anybody know which team this was? This was the Arizona Cardinals a few weeks ago. They came out with a challenge to try and eat first of all, they charge us $75, okay? But that's not the price, if you know what I mean. 7 pounds, what's in it? Hamburger bun, and 5 third-pound burger patties, hot dogs, bratwurst, American cheese, bacon, chicken, French fries, total of 8,300 calories, okay? And the challenge was that if you pay the $75 and you eat that within an hour, you get a Cardinals jersey and you get your name up on the board on your way to the hospital. So as it turns out, 3 members of their culinary staff tried it. None of them completed it, and one of them ended up very sick and couldn't come to work the next day. We need to get everyone to understand what's on this graph. This is one of our famous nutritionist, dietitians, Juliana Heber, who just says, okay, what does 400 calories look like? Okay? And it really gives credence to the fact that when you're eating a plant-based diet, you're getting a lower calorie density, you're getting a lot of nutrition and not a lot of calories. If you put meat in it, you can actually fill up your stomach with a lot more calories. And if it's oil, the fat you eat is the fat you wear. That aphorism is actually very true. And so you will eat a lot on top of that 400 calories. So let's switch and talk more about other risk factors that go along with the obesity, because there are many of them. And I'm going to share with you literature that has really looked at this. I would love to share large massive, long-term, prospective trials that are done with randomization. This group gets Mediterranean, this group gets controlled diet, this group gets vegan, the different varieties. We don't have a lot of that. We have a little bit of it. And so a lot of the data that I'm going to share with you is from very large data sets. One of them that we have to give kudos to is the Adventist Health Study. This is led by Gary Fraser, and he is fortunate to have, from the pulpit, the idea is people should eat a vegetarian diet, but with eggs and dairy. And that's sort of one population, but they don't throw you out if you eat a standard American diet, so that's actually the largest portion of the group. But then there are people who want to cut the meat, some semi-vegetarian people who, well, Jesus ate fish, we're going to eat fish. And so that's the middle group. And then, particularly in Southern California, where around Loma Linda, there's a lot of people who are actually vegans. And it's a growing population, as I'll show you from their data. And so this inherently gives you that five-fold diet that you can compare with things like risk factors. Let's just take a look at obesity. Now, if you define overweight as a body mass index of more than 25, the only group that isn't overweight on average is the vegan population. How about diabetes? If you start with the non-vegetarian population as the baseline, you get a cut, about 25, 30% with each restriction of animal products until you get down to a very low baseline in the vegan population of both diabetes and hypertension. And this is really what we should be looking at. Now, for those of us who are skeptics and say, well, that's just risk factors, how about life and death? They do have a more recent publication that looks specifically at mortality, particularly at heart disease mortality. And we're talking about a 30% reduction if a person will do the vegetarian diet. But my favorite slide is this one from their group, and this was published a couple months ago. This is the age incidence of each diet. And what is immediately obvious is that the vegan population just grows and grows and grows. People are converting, Bill Clinton, Eric Adams. People will change their diet because of their diseases and then survive, and now they're in their 70s, and that population is growing. The red in the back, appropriately colored, is the standard American diet, and they are dying, okay, or converting. And so I want to see the 80-year-olds. I suspect that they're actually going to be even, and that this movement is actually going to grow the way it should. Let me talk a little bit about blood pressure, because there's a lot of data that we should all know about in terms of vegetarian diet and blood pressure. The bottom line of it, a lot of studies shown graphically here in terms of the impact on blood pressure. Let me summarize it for you. One of three things is likely to happen when a person with high blood pressure goes on a plant-based diet. They're going to get a little improvement, a lot of improvement, or a cure. That's generally what happens. If you look at how important that could be, we have a healthcare system that's really failing. The expenditures are not sustainable. That excess cost growth is not going to be absorbed by our Medicare system. It's supposed to be insolvent in 2026. And so if we're going to have anything for our kids, in terms of a healthcare system, for us, as we age into it, we have to do something, and we have to do it now. So I always make the pitch after looking at this. I have a big heart for Medicare. I've worked for them for 4 years on one of the panels, and you got the feeling that they're under the gun because they have this limited resource and they have to carry everybody. And so let's do them a favor. Let's fix our own health, pay into the system, and never take anything out. Okay, so all right, back to the high blood pressure. Yeah, it's true. 58% of all Medicare beneficiaries have hypertension, and that was before we changed the guidelines to say that the definition of high blood pressure was anything above 130, adding another 15 million Americans to the rolls of hypertensives. And so this is their number one expenditure, and we can do something about it. Here are our new guidelines from 2017, American College of Cardiology, American Heart Association, talking about physical activity, cutting the amount of alcohol that people are doing, losing weight, decreasing the sodium intake, increasing the potassium intake, and more of a plant-based diet. The DASH diet is almost completely plant-based, but has some low-fat dairy products, has occasional meat, occasional fish, just reducing away from the American diet to more of a diet rich in fruits, vegetables, and whole grains will actually have a dramatic improvement in blood pressure. save our country. Because we're really looking at it. 2020 is when we're supposed to about hit that $1 trillion mark for Medicare. 30% of it being spent on hypertension, medications, admissions, renal failure. Every person who gets hypertensive nephropathy goes on dialysis. That's $87,650 per year per beneficiary. Is that sustainable? I don't know. Okay. But I want to give a special shout out to sugar because it's everywhere and it's something that we all need to know more about. If you had to take one take-home slide to change how you behave with sugar, it's probably this slide. The idea is that we should be eating more fiber in our carbohydrates and less of the sugar, and the best way to do that is to know what's what. And so before I saw this slide, I love grapes and watermelon, and I hated blackberries and raspberries. Now I've reversed it. Okay? I put grapes and raisins in a salad, so I'm getting a lot of fiber with them because it's a massive amount of sugar for the amount of fiber. Why is that ratio important? Because of insulin. The more sugar you eat, and that could be white bread, it could be sucrose, fructose, any of the sugars, you will have a rise in your insulin level. And when that insulin level goes up, you will generate plaque. You will generate high triglycerides, impair your blood vessel response, get high blood pressure. That increases so-called atherosclerosis or plaque formation in the coronary arteries and everywhere else, and leading to heart attack, stroke, and death. And so you can actually reverse this if you lower the sugar in the diet, but sustaining all of these metabolic consequences is what our American diet is doing pretty much every day. So there is now literature that tells you that there's a unique relationship between cardiovascular death and the amount of sugar you eat. It's a curvilinear relationship. You really want it to be down around 7 or 8% of your diet to avoid that, okay? And it seems like this was published in 2014. Why didn't we know this beforehand? That's the question that everybody's gonna get. The second question, of course, is our beverages, okay? This was published a little more recently, that sweetened beverages, and we're all talking about sugar-sweetened beverages. That's not what it says. It's actually sweetened beverages because the low-calorie sweeteners actually are dangerous as well. And so that increase in diabetes is about 20% for every glass that people drink. So let's be really careful. American Heart Association a few weeks ago did actually put out a low-calorie sweetened beverage warning because each of them does increase insulin levels. That old thing that, oh, you can change to the diet cola, but your weight doesn't decrease, is because it makes you absorb more of what you've already eaten and crave more carbohydrates. So that's really not helping you. One of the reasons it was hidden, I like to tell my fellows and students and residents, if you're gonna do something really bad in the scientific community, hide the paperwork, get rid of it. These people actually had all of the papers in a box saying that they were being paid. This wasn't in New York, it was actually in Boston, of course. Okay? And they actually were being paid by the Sugar Research Foundation to shift all of the blame from sugar, for heart disease, from sugar to saturated fat and cholesterol. Two pretty good targets, by the way, but it's something that we should know that sugar is related. Now, one of the first hints that there was a sugar problem actually was published, this is almost 10 years ago, from the Nurses' Health Study, another one of those very large cohorts that makes incredible observations. And any nurses in the audience, if you're participating, I want to personally thank you for a whole lot of these slides. They talked about what makes nurses die. And they, mostly I would have thought cigarettes, because a lot of the time we were still smoking in our healthcare institutions. Cigarettes came in third. Number one was getting older. Okay, probably should have thought of that one. Number two was diabetes. Number three was cigarettes. But then if we look at the diet stuff in the upper right-hand corner, eating vegetable fiber decreases your mortality. We could have guessed that. Eating cholesterol, everyone should know it. Most people try to hide it. The marketing tries to hide it from you. Eating a cholesterol load increases your mortality. Okay, that right there says everybody should be a vegan. But the point estimate for eating a sugar load is actually worse than eating animals, okay, by a little bit. And so we've had some data that says that sugar is bad for you, just we weren't focusing on it. Okay, now I know we're not in the South, but there are parts of the boroughs here that have inherited the south side of Chicago diet, which is the same as the stroke belt in the south. And that has been studied by the regards investigators, reasons for geographic and racial differences in stroke. And the reason to mention them in the sugar portion of my talk is that this is a diet that is high in refined carbohydrates and sugar. That is not yams, but candied yams. Putting honey on the ham and putting ham in the greens and sugar-sweetened beverages. And that kind of diet, shown in red here, has a poorer likelihood than all of the other terrible American diets. Okay? Has the poorer survival without heart attack, stroke, and death. That's about a 56% higher risk of heart disease, 30% higher risk of stroke, and a higher risk of dying if you have kidney disease. Now, the question is, if you take that sort of soul food or African-American southern type of diet and change it, does it change everything? Well, we don't have long-term outcomes, but the Adventists were able to study the risk factors, particularly in the African-American cohort, and it was incredible. The amount of diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, all of them cut in half at least. The obesity, particularly central obesity, all of it cut in half. And so let's make the changes in the diet, but change away from the history. I know it's not easy for my African-American patients. When I'm telling them that they have to change their diet, I'm attacking them, I'm attacking their family, their parents, their church, the community, and we have to sort of just change that. It's not just African Americans, the same thing is true of our Hispanic population. It's very much what you eat is cultural. My Dutch population in South Holland, Illinois, where I lived for 20 years, same thing. Everyone has their own culture, and a lot of those cultures are atherogenic, and we have to be able to intervene with sensitivity and be able to make some behavior changes. All right, one more piece about the sugar. Was actually published last year in the Journal of American College of Cardiology. We were all stunned by this, that there are a lot of vegans who eat bad food. It turns out that avoiding animals is not the only thing. Avoiding those rapidly absorbable carbohydrates, having refined grains, fried potatoes, sweets, sugar-sweetened beverages, and juices. Actually, if you could, those of you in the front, or the rest of you can trust me, that little dotted line of increasing coronary heart disease death is actually higher than eating animals. And so we have to be very careful with plant-based diets, that it's a healthy plant-based diet. I thought that was going to be the most insightful diet literature of the year, but I think this one actually exceeded it. It was in, again, Nurses' Health Study with the health professional follow-up, looking at what kind of things people take in that make them die. And the list is actually very much the kinds of things that if you thought about it, you would say the same thing. Too much sodium, more than 2,000 milligrams, not eating enough nuts and seeds, eating high processed meats. I had to laugh a little bit at this. The definition of high processed meat is greater than 0 grams per day. That's any, okay? Not having enough omega-3 fatty acids. Seafood, we'll talk about, I'll define for you what I mean by a substitutionary benefit. If you're eating fish instead of steak, you will actually improve your mortality. Not enough vegetables, not enough fruits. Oh, high sugar-sweetened beverages. And the definition of high is greater than 0, so that's any, okay? Low whole grains, not enough, more saturated fat instead of polyunsaturated fat, and red meat. All of them reach statistical significance. All of them increase mortality. And so that puts into perspective what a lot of the press took really out of context, the PURE trial, where they said that all of us who are coaching people to not eat animals and replacing all of our animal products and high-fat diets with carbohydrates were just killing people. Well, they're right. And what's being missed by the press is if you look in the methodology of the PURE trial, they're talking about refined carbohydrates. In many poor countries, it's white rice, it's sugar, and they're using those refined carbohydrates for calories and for sustenance. That's not what we're talking about in the United States. We have plenty of food to eat, we have plenty of food choices. But yes, carbohydrates if they're refined, actually can be more dangerous than eating animal products. The other point they made is try to do much more polyunsaturated fat rather than saturated fat. Okay, I think I'm in the right position. position to talk about some of the political issues. I have to admit that I've been a vegan, coaching patients, keeping it sort of in the medical environment until I was president of ACC, and a Democrat from Oregon, Earl Blumenauer, came up to us at one of the ACC meetings where he just sort of crashed our party. He wanted to attend to try to talk about subsidies in the United States. And it turns out that there are billions of dollars that are being spent by our government producing unhealthy foods, okay, which are then consumed by the population. It's increasing our obesity, particularly in children. And these ingredients, 14 ingredients like corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, cornstarch, vegetable shortening. Sometimes you find a product that has all of them, and that's the Hostess Twinkie, okay? It turns out that this is why it's so inexpensive. You can get a whole package of 10 for $2.64, and it really doesn't contribute to our health at all. Now, one of the things that we've taken up, we did it in Chicago. It was short-lived, but we did take it up to try to change sugar-sweetened beverages, which should have been all sweetened beverages, to put a tax on it. Turns out that there's a good evidence base. There's actually randomized trials where you try it and see what happens, and it definitely decreases consumption by the population. So all of you here who are in charge of hospitals, you can influence people. If you're in charge of any political environment, you can change things, absolutely. You can get people to just by changing the price point, you can get people to change their behavior. So we did take this up with the American Medical Association. The AMA is not the same old grandfather's AMA that, you know, we had so many struggles back in the day. This is an organization that's very forward-thinking, doesn't represent as many physicians as it did in the past, but when we were very nervously walking up there talking about these nutrition issues, thinking how we're going to, you know, make sure that this gets passed by the House of Delegates, the line is out the door. People coming up to the microphone and saying, the hospitals, all of our medical institutions, they're unhealthy. We're trying to fix the health of the patients, and they're not helping us. And so we do have a good resolution on that's AMA policy, saying that we should be reducing sugar-sweetened beverages, and that hospitals should be serving vegan food. Okay? This was not hard. I mean, we thought it was going to be hard, but we had cardiologists walking up to the microphone without us planning it and saying, I put 3 stents in that left anterior descending. I came around the next morning and they were feeding him bacon and eggs. When are we going to make that change? Now, of course, AMA has its impact, probably more impact on Congress, I would think, than it has on the American Hospital Association. You know, they just say, you're not the boss of me. But we all should be getting together and trying to influence this process for all of our healthcare institutions. The most recent one was actually trying to get out of the guidelines that, you know, people have to have a doctor's note in order to have a vegan diet. That's insane. We understand the health effects of it, and so we have AMA policy that actually goes along with that now. Okay, I'm going to switch and talk a little bit about fat, because it's something that keeps coming back. You'll see it in Time magazine. You see it all over, that fat is somehow good for you, when the data says exactly the opposite. You can look at large cohorts of men and women. No question that saturated fat increases the risk of coronary heart disease. Another one of those slides to remember would be this one. Trans fats are the worst. You know nothing about that in New York, I hope, because as I'll talk about in the next few slides. Saturated fat is terrible. Monounsaturated fat and polyunsaturated fats decrease mortality, mostly by decreasing the bad cholesterol. Trans fats, I'm really preaching to the choir here. It's so wonderful to be in a place where, along with Denmark, Switzerland, etc., where people will have a hard time getting trans fats in restaurants and the like. It increases risk of heart attack and stroke, diabetes, and we have a wonderful publication a few months ago by Tammy Polanski, one of my former fellows at the University of Chicago, who looked at what happened when New York, the counties, decided to restrict the availability, public availability of trans fats. And the answer is, you cut heart attacks and strokes. These are people's lives. They're people's brains. Okay? their families, their ability to get around, disability, you can really impact things. And so New York is a shining example, and hopefully, as our borough president said, we can take it from here and move it around the country. So let's decrease the heart attack and stroke burden by changing what's available to people. For those who are still skeptical, they want to eat the fat, there's a wonderful dietary fat and cardiovascular disease came out in 2017 that looked at pretty much all of the world's literature. They got a lot of pushback about their incantation about coconut oil because there's some apparently Southeastern Asian countries who actually, that's a big, huge part of their economy, is selling this stuff, but it probably is good for your skin and not for your digestion. Okay, all right. Let's talk about the high protein diet. So those of you who follow Twitter, you might have seen a nice Twitter war in the last couple weeks about this. It started pretty much, one of the biggest proponents of it was Atkins before he purportedly died of heart disease. Does it work? It really does. You can lose a massive amount of weight. The problem is that the literature says that you might lose more weight than you intended. Permanent weight loss? Anybody? Okay, all right. Yeah, so that data is actually not looking very good for longevity in terms of mortality. This is the Eric trial. It's the largest study that I could find, 40,000 deaths around the US. And they said that if you're eating a low carbohydrate diet, you actually increase your mortality. A high carbohydrate diet, like we saw in the PURE trial, particularly if it's refined carbohydrate, that also increases mortality. So if you're doing a low carb diet from lamb, beef, pork, chicken, higher mortality. If you're doing it from a plant-based diet, vegetables, nuts, peanut butter, whole grain breads, that actually lowers mortality. How much? Almost about the same amount. Animal-derived fat and protein, 18% increase in mortality. Plant-based low-carb diet, an 18% decrease. Okay? That's the graph. And for the people who were in the PURE trial saying, well, we told you so, they're absolutely right. You can actually look at a lot of meta-analyses that they analyzed and came to the very same conclusion. I'll go into that in a second. The PURE trial, they actually graphically superimposed the PURE trial in blue on top of their data. PURE trial did not look at low carb, just high carb, and the data is almost superimposable. So neither high carb or low carb is actually good for you. The final nail in that coffin, I would say, would be the low carb diet meta-analysis that actually looked at how much death do you get if you do this for a long period of time and you're using animals, and the answer is about a 31% increase in mortality. I have to do a special shout out to the group that looked at people who have had heart attacks and tried to do a low carb diet. That actually increases mortality by about 53%. So this is something that no one should be doing if they have any risk factors at all. All right, what's wrong with it? Well, it has red meat in it. And we know a couple of principles from long-term studies. This is published in 2012, but there's numerous studies I could cite. Red meat kills. Processed red meat kills faster. And so if you have a linear relationship between the doses of red meat and the mortality, and for those people who say moderation is good, well, the biggest slope in mortality is between 0 and 1, so I probably wouldn't do any. The best thing that you could do in terms of substitute, shown on this graph, is take nuts instead of processed red meat, and you decrease mortality almost by 25%. Have to talk a little bit, since I'm in New York, about heart failure, because people have actually worked on this very hard here in the city, showing that if you do more plant-based diet, you can decrease heart failure. This study, published several years ago, talked about the unique relationship between processed meat, but also red meat, but more with processed red meat. Everybody know what that is? That's bacon, ham, lunch meat, sausage, that sort of stuff. Increasing heart failure incidence and mortality dramatically. But this increase in mortality, it may not be as bad for most of the animal products that people are eating as processed red meat, but a question you'd like to ask is sort of how much can you get away with? Well, there was an article that could define that pretty well. This was a large analysis of the combination of nurses' health study and health professionals follow-up, so nurses and doctors. It's been heavily criticized because people don't want to hear the message, or maybe it's true, doctors and nurses don't know what they're eating and can't fill out a form. It's probably that pretty good data. And so 131,000 participants, and this is the data. If vegetable protein is bad for you, it would be a dot on the right. It didn't happen. The only thing that was neutral was cancer was not related to dairy intake. Everything else was a little bit on the left side or a lot on the left side, meaning that you'd be better off substituting vegetable protein for the animal protein. Let me blow up on a couple of them, particularly the cardiovascular disease, because the processed red meat, as our VP mentioned, is a class 1 carcinogen, according to the World Health Organization. Interestingly enough, if we do want to take a look at cancer deaths, it turns out that cancer deaths were slightly exceeded the processed red meat by egg consumption. And the interesting part statistically is that so many people died of cancer with an association with the eggs that it made the eggs' relationship to heart disease less significant because dead people don't have heart attacks. Okay, so bottom line though, is if you just look at alive versus dead, all-cause mortality, there is a unique relationship between all kinds of animal products and increasing mortality. And this is a study of people, including the people who have at least one cardiovascular risk factor. So I can't exclude that there are some people on this planet who can get away with it, but not most of us. Okay, fish, we hear that all the time. Fish is good for you. Well, let's look at the data. This is one of those fantastic studies, even though it was retracted a few weeks ago and republished with some changes in the randomization and a little bit of a scientific statistical problem, but the data is essentially about the same. It's the Mediterranean diet. And everyone was so excited about a 30% decrease in heart attack, stroke, and death. What's the problem? That if you're doing that extra virgin olive oil and you do the fish, either one, you decrease the combined endpoint, but you did not decrease heart attack or stroke. Okay? You actually heart attack or total mortality. All you did was decrease stroke. That's a great thing. Okay? If you can get people off of an American diet onto a Mediterranean diet, they won't live longer, but you will decrease the amount of stroke. And so your neurologist may not be happy with you, but you will do the sort of the disease burden. I think most people would rather have a heart attack than a stroke, just because of the impact that it has on their lives. Okay, they heard a lot of criticism. Okay, 30% decrease. That means if I'm going to treat 10 people with this, 7 of them are going to have an event anyway. That's really not what we're looking for. And they heard a lot of criticism from the vegetarian community saying that the diet is just not that good. So they did the right thing as far as I'm concerned, which is to go back and reanalyze their data for vegetables. And look what happened. It's a huge mortality benefit. If you're doing a so-called, what they call the pro-vegetarian diet, Mediterranean diet, that is more and more vegetables, the last 2 quintiles are the highest amount of vegetables that people were eating, you had a dramatic decrease in mortality. So something to keep in mind. Okay, dairy. Get this question all the time because articles like this one published a couple weeks ago, was it last week, saying that the pure group for 5 continents, 21 countries, you have more deaths if you don't have a dairy. And it sounds like something that everybody needs to jump on and eat more dairy. The problem with it is, this is the classic substitutionary benefit. If all you can get, because you're in a poor country, is dairy, and you're going to do dairy instead of meat for your protein and for your sustenance, you will do better, no question about it. Now, what they don't have is a comparison with plant-based milks. I was in clinic yesterday, I usually bring up the little graph, it's usually 12, it's now 19 different kinds of plant-based milk that are available and marketed. So we need that trial. We need them to go back to all those countries, get in a time machine, do the study over with some plant-based options, and I think they'll find a different result. Okay, how about nuts? Even within the vegan community, there's people who say we shouldn't eat nuts, it's too much fat. I agree with that if you're overweight, but if you're talking about, again, a substitutionary benefit, nuts versus animal protein, there is really good hard evidence. This is from Adventist studies, and that if you are using meat for protein, mortality of 1.61, that's a 61% increase in mortality, and that's a 40% decrease if you stopped eating the animal products and eat nuts and seeds instead. Okay. A lot of controversy about cholesterol. Everybody thinks that the cholesterol is everywhere, you eat it and it won't make any difference because most of the cholesterol is in your genes. Well, it turns out the diet can have a huge impact, and we need to get that message out there. Chicken has a lot of cholesterol, almost the same as pork and beef. Salmon is better, but only a little bit. I just throw up a few comparisons for where people can get protein and not have to worry about it at all. Of course, the one that you really want to avoid is egg yolks. And unfortunately, even though egg whites don't have any cholesterol, they're most of the time are going to be eaten with as a whole egg or 2 or 3, and that has a massive amount of cholesterol per 100 grams. Now, if you were to take that American diet full of cholesterol and just change it prospectively, randomized trial, so-called portfolio diet, that it had plant sterols, soy protein, viscous fibers, and almonds, okay? What happens? It takes about 2 weeks for the cholesterol to fall. The LDL falls dramatically, almost 35%. The other little diamond, or the other part of the curve, is where you use a statin. Statins do work for lowering cholesterol. They lower mortality for high-risk people. They also both lower C-reactive protein, the inflammation. You heard our BP say the inflammation went away? Yeah, that's what happens when you do plant-based nutrition. It works with the statin, but it works faster with the diet. Now, if you look at all of the world's literature, despite those claims repeatedly that cholesterol ingestion does not change your cholesterol, the data is pretty strong. There was one study where it actually went up and a couple where it didn't change much, but the vast majority of the data is on that side of the curve, meaning the less animals you eat, the lower your cholesterol intake, the lower your cholesterol is going to be, and a bigger change, big difference between the cholesterol before and after. And those were all prospective trials, a massive number of them. Let's talk a little bit about inflammation, just because it's becoming more of an issue. Okay, actually we're going to talk about protein, because I decided to kill that part just to make sure that I had time for questions and answers. But the bottom line of the inflammation, as I talked about with the portfolio diet, is that there is a unique relationship between inflammation and heart attacks. It doesn't seem to be quite as strong as LDL, but you put the two of them together by eating an animal-based diet, and you will get more heart attack, stroke, and death. And you can treat it. We have anti-inflammatory diets as well as anti-inflammatory drugs. We probably should be doing it with the diet. Okay, let's talk a bit more about protein. A lot of jokes go around about protein. Eating the food of beast. Do vegetables even have protein? And this comes up all the time. When I try to talk a patient into eating a more healthy diet, they say, "Well, where am I going to get the protein?" Well, I say, "Okay, you want to." Where do you think you're going to get your protein? Well, I'm going to eat a steak. Well, that's a cow. Before she was tortured and killed, where did she get her protein? What did she eat? And they say grass. And then people realize that plants have plenty of protein. They always have. And you could actually go to Google and get this kind of information. So, for 100 grams, chicken's probably number one, right? Followed by beef, pork. That people don't understand that beef and peanuts have the same amount of protein per 100 grams, okay? Egg whites, people are eating egg whites all the time for protein. Well, it's not that much protein compared to nuts. And more importantly, soybeans is the number one that I can find. A little bit more than the animal products in terms of beef and pork. Now, the difference is getting your protein from an animal source risks this 4-letter word that everybody should be getting to know. Everybody knows about cholesterol, they know about saturated fat. Fewer people know about TMAO. That's trimethylamine in oxide. And it came out in the New England Journal of Medicine. I'm not sure why people don't know about it. It was a very nice graphic. You take the cheese, the eggs, and the steak, you put it in your mouth. Okay, it goes in your GI tract, and your GI tract with the bacteria make this stuff, trimethylamine, then your liver turns it into trimethylamine in oxide, which increases the stickiness of the clotting elements in your bloodstream, creates more plaque, upsets the plaque, so more heart attack, stroke, and death. It's not that complicated, but it's something that I think we all should be paying attention to. This is looking at blood tests, and the highest quartile of people, the people who have most of it in their blood, the most amount of TMAO in their bloodstream, have the most heart attack, stroke, and death, and the most heart failure death. Okay? And hopefully we will have people looking, as the Cleveland Clinic is popularizing this and popularizing the blood test. And they'll start talking about probiotics to try to change the bacteria in your GI tract. Maybe antibiotics, maybe enzyme blockers so you don't turn the trimethylamine into trimethylamine N oxide. Or you can just change your diet and don't eat this stuff. Really? Okay. There's a relationship between TMAO and chronic kidney disease as well. That has to be mentioned. And if you have heart failure, it definitely makes it worse. No question about it. Higher level, poor prognosis at 1 year. And so, yes, at Sinai in New York, we have this. I haven't seen the full publication of it yet. Hopefully it'll be out soon, talking about taking heart failure people and doing more of a plant-based diet, decrease the development of heart failure. Okay, so getting to the sort of the last part of the talk, I hopefully have convinced you that everybody should change their diet if you haven't done it already. But I have to do a shout out to Andrea Wolk. I've never met her, but she is a very studious person who goes through the entire world's literature on meat. I don't know what she has against it, but this is what she came up with. That in 1970, there was a handful of articles saying meat's bad for you. By 2015, there were 450, per year. And she read them all, and she added them all up. So if it wasn't for diabetes, stroke, coronary heart disease, and heart failure, it would be fine. But these things do increase, particularly with processed red meat. This nice, complicated graph is talking about all the things that she could find that are associated with having those cardiovascular events and dying. Everything from diabetes at the bottom, the TMAO is on the left. One that is a repeated offender in the recent literature is heme iron. We all eat, we were eating steaks and liver and all that stuff because you needed the iron, right? Yeah, it turns out that the iron kills people. If it's heme iron, that is iron that's attached to red blood cells inside of an animal. It's in an oxidized form that generates plaque and increases plaque instability. And so the NIH AARP study also called out heme iron as well as the nitrates and nitrites that are associated or that are in processed meat. But the heme iron has a unique relationship. People should be getting their iron from vegetable sources to avoid this, making foam cells, which upset plaque and more ischemic events. Went a long way to explain this relationship between iron and heart attack, which we've known, this is an old slide, we've known it for over 20 years. The more iron you have in your bloodstream, the more heart attacks you have, by a lot. Now, in closing this section, there's one more thing we all ought to know, and that is stay away from ticks and don't eat mammals if you're a mammal, okay? So it turns out, this was just a few weeks ago, this was published, and so it's news to most of us, that people eating mammalian flesh, if they are exposed to a particular tick or they have a genetic predisposition, can actually develop an immune response to the oligosaccharide galactose, alpha-1,3 galactose. Well, what is that? It's a piece of an animal product that's probably similar to some mammalian oligosaccharides that are in your own body. So you hear a lot of people talk about everything from lupus to inflammatory bowel disease, sort of you eat animals and you start reacting to your own tissues because of a similarity, more than likely. But this IgE response has a unique relationship with formation of plaque. And so on the top is the typical American diet. You don't have the IgE response. You have some plaque that we know that starts in teenage years on the American diet. But the amount of plaque burden that you have if you have this IgE response is incredibly high. So there are probably some mammals that could get away with eating mammals, probably not most of us. Okay. One of the things we want to talk about, particularly for the hospital folks here, is you're going to be presented with people who are going to bypass surgery and stents, have their heart attack, and what can you really do about it? Sure, you can treat the acute phase, but what's going to stop them from coming back? Why can't we get that plaque to go away, or can't we? So we've actually had data for quite a while that says the lower the cholesterol, this is 1979, Greg Brown, and using horrific drugs to get the cholesterol down. But if you get the cholesterol down, you will get plaque to go away by coronary angiography. This is Steve Nissen at Cleveland Clinic looking at intracoronary ultrasound, and you could actually measure with a computer the amount of plaque, and that plaque actually can be cut in half almost by high-dose statin, not moderate dose, not low dose, but by high-dose statins to lower the cholesterol dramatically. But can you do it with diet? You may have seen some of these angiograms. They're looking pretty good. The plaque's going away. These narrowings are opening up over time. You have data from Dean Ornish in the lifestyle trial that the more adherence you have to a plant-based diet, the more negative the plaque remodeling is going to be, and sort of a moderate response with medium adherence and not much response if you're not adherent to the diet. Nuclear, my favorite, you can see in changes in blood flow to the heart within 3 months. And he showed that with PET scanning where the blue is really bad and it becomes much better without an angioplasty, without bypass surgery, just with the diet. And showing the number of areas that have these huge perfusion defects actually does go down and goes down very quickly. Then you have Esselstyn. So people who will criticize Caldwell Esselstyn, most of the criticism actually comes from Cleveland Clinic where he is, interestingly enough, but he's got a long-term follow-up study of people looking at nuclear scans showing improvement with his diet, and this is probably the one slide that gets more play than anyone else, where this 41-year-old anesthesiologist has this massive plaque burden in the middle of his left anterior descending, and it's all gone in 32 months with the Esselstyn diet. We looked at the entire group. Adherent patients do very well. Non-adherent patients do less well. You end up with less in the way of stroke, bypass, restenting, and that's really good. It would be great to see prospective. The biggest criticism of this is the people who adhere to, now this is not just your regular vegan diet. This is a vegan diet with no oils. That means no nuts, no avocados, no olive oil. The people who adhere to that are just different people. They're going to do exercise probably better. They're going to do probably everything in a risk-averse way and have better outcomes. So it would be good to see that as a prospective trial, but as observational studies go, it's pretty good. So I'm going to just a handful of summary slides here. One would be to another shout out to the Harvard group with the Nurses Health Study and Health Professional Follow-Up, because I was really happy to see that they went to the Vatican Health Summit a few months ago and said, hey, everybody gives up meat, we cut premature death by about 1/3. I would say that if you add up all of this literature I've been showing you, that we have an opportunity to improve outcomes dramatically. Getting rid of the animal products, there are none that are safe, there's some that are better than others, and we've got this long list of hypertension, high cholesterol, or everything from heart attack to erectile dysfunction, heart attack, stroke, and death, heart failure. We can continue to treat these with drugs, or we can change our lifestyles and prevent them in the first place. So I like to brag about Rush because we now have 21.75 plant-based cardiologists. So people say, well, how did that happen? And I said, it actually was sort of reverse remodeling. I was at a conference and I got a little glib, I guess, and I said something I said to friends and family only, that there are two kinds of cardiologists, sort of paralleling what our VP has said. Two kinds of cardiologists, vegans and those who haven't read the data. And I try to backtrack from it, but now I've had so many people change their diet. I'm really happy about that. Their health has changed, and their attentiveness, their ability to work in our tough environment, all of us, they're higher energy people. And on the opposite, I've had so many friends my age, particularly African American cardiologists, die of heart disease. I wish I'd gotten to them and said something embarrassing like that in front of them. And so we will keep on this mission. I liken this mission to what we went through in the 50s, when physicians were actually pushing cigarettes. Nurses were doing it as well. This is unbelievable, the impact that healthcare workers can have on the population, and that's why the cigarette industry was using us for that. Well, there was a phenomenon in 1964, and that was when the Surgeon General actually put a warning label on it. And this is something that we all should be striving for. If we could get this to happen on animal products, and maybe a little graph that says exactly how much each one, like processed meat, red meat, eggs, chicken, fish, and dairy, so that people would know and maybe make some smarter food choices. Put, red, yellow, and green labels on things. And it has to start with physicians. And so I'm going to say Professor Adams, based on that wonderful introduction, talked about the problem with the pharmaceutical industry. Well, they're just turning a profit off of the things that people do to themselves. And the physicians, they're actually not to blame. Why? Because of this. Physicians are not taught about nutrition. This is cardiology. American College of Cardiology membership was actually polled. Now let me just blow up one question for you. I recall receiving a high level of nutrition education that gave me excellent skills for counseling patients. Okay? It was 0% of the fellows in training and 1% of the practicing physicians. So what does that mean? That means that the patients are going to go through their bypass surgery, they're going to have a stent, they're going to have their heart attack. No one's going to tell them why they had it. They're not going to do anything about it except treat it with medication. And what does that really mean? It means the doctor's going to die of heart disease. The leading cause of death in cardiologists is heart disease. So it's not purposeful, not doing it for profit. It's doing it out of not knowing any better. And so it happened to a friend of mine. We overlapped our presidential team duties a little bit with me coming out of ACC and then going into American Heart Association. He actually listened to my plant-based talk, and we're out to dinner, and the ESC guys are eating seafood. I'm eating tofu, and he's eating a steak. He says, "Oh, I'm from Texas. I'm going to eat steak." And I have bad family history, but I'll be okay. I'm taking a statin. A few weeks later, right on the podium, he has a heart attack. Fortunately, he's okay. He got a stent doing his left anterior descending, and this is a lesson for us all physicians that we are not immune. Okay, what's going to happen to our patients is going to happen to us if we don't make things change. And right on time, Dan Purchase walks in, not knowing that the slide was going to be about him. Okay, to this end, we're trying to reach physicians. Okay, and one of the best ways of reaching them is through the medical literature. And so with the help of Dan and the Plantrition Project, we are starting the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention. I'm pleased to have been asked to be the editor-in-chief, and we've got an incredible staff. Excuse me, incredible staff. And we're hoping to see papers coming from everywhere that will get this message out about how to prevent, not just treat. We're going to get there. The Twitter war, and there was another Twitter war this weekend. It's happening all the time. Violent opposition. It reminds me of Schopenhauer, okay? The three phases of truth. First is ridiculed, they just laughed at us. Then the violent opposition starts. But ultimately, it's going to be accepted as self-evident. We will get there. Thank you very much.
We'll have about 10 minutes for Q&A.
Wonderful. I had a question. The 0.75, was that someone on the staff that was still eating meat?
0.75 is one of our interventionalists. He says he's vegan until 6 p.m.
So, thank you very much. Rich Rosenfeld, I'm from SUNY Downstate, the current president of the medical staff down there. My question for you has to do with kids versus adults. And we talked about chronic disease in adults, and clearly the foundation for the problem is laid in childhood.
That's right.
But I'm curious to your response to a recent conundrum we had with our medical executive committee, where we did pass and get approval on a statement on plant-based health that went something to the effect that plant-based nutrition can prevent, treat, and reverse certain chronic conditions in adults based on current best evidence, and we laid it out. But there was a strong undercurrent that we had to include in adults. In other words, this is unproven in kids, it could be dangerous, we can't muck with kids' diets. What are your thoughts on that?
So it's interesting. I try to stay in adult cardiology, but I had to get into it because of that Twitter war, the same thing. And the literature says some interesting things, that if you're doing a good balanced diet, you make sure that you're getting the protein, the B12. B12, everybody thinks it comes from animals, it doesn't, it comes from the soil. It's just that cows eat dirty vegetables and we don't. So we have to take a B12 supplement, but not too much because it causes cancer in ex-smokers. If you're doing a balanced vegan diet, it actually has been shown to be beneficial for kids, less obesity, less risk factors. And it's actually one study that I'm not sure I believe says that if you raise them vegan, they have a 16-point higher IQ. Probably have smarter parents. But I think the concern was right. That is, when we're talking about these adult studies, these are hundreds of thousands of people followed for 30 years. And not everybody was vegan all the time, but you can get a lot of data out of that. And so I would say that what you're referencing is a call for more prospective data for people who believe in this to actually study the pediatric population much more carefully. It's hard to randomize people to diet, particularly kids. I have a hard time. I couldn't imagine getting that through an IRB, but someone has to do it, or we'll always have this dearth of data.
Thank you, folks. Thanks for sharing this wonderful information with us. I've been off meat and all that stuff for about 37 years, and I cut it out abruptly, just stopped completely. Now, my question is, how can we get health and nutrition back into our schools so that our children would be more informed? And could we get this type of data shared more in the clinics that are popping up all over our communities and so forth, so people would know more about this type of nutritional health?
So you're absolutely right. It has to start with the kids. Probably everyone here knows that we've known this since the Korean War, that 18-year-old boys who were having autopsies, that it was actually shown that they have fatty streaks from atherosclerosis beginning in the teenage years on the American diet. That recently has been shown in 3-year-olds. We have to make a change, and it has to be at that level. How do you do that? Well, I know that there's been American College of Cardiology in Northern California had a program going to put carrots and celeries instead of candy in the snacks. It actually did change the amount of obesity short term, and it seemed to change diet choices in the lunchroom and seemed to change the parents. We need more of that. We had it going for a while with the FLOTUS, First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama. She had a food czar, Deb Eschmeyer, and they were going, I think it was Norfolk, Virginia, doing that same kind of thing and getting more fruits and vegetables into the schools. I think it more or less got interrupted by the presidency ending, but it would be nice to see everyone who's in politics try to get the data out there. We have so much to lose, not just the health, but the economics of this country are dependent on this. So thank you for those comments. I wish I had could just snap a finger and make it happen.
Hi, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. My name is Megan Christ. I'm from New York Memory Center. I was wondering if you could share any implications related to prevention of Alzheimer's disease or effects on someone who's already diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia.
So thank you for that question. And so there are a variety of blood vessel-borne illnesses, and sure it starts with erectile function, but peripheral artery disease, stroke, small vessel disease in the brain, as well as the heart disease. And we had Rush have a big NIH grant. Martha Claire Morris is the lead investigator, $75 million worth of NIH money, doing a prospective randomized trial of the MIND diet, which is Mediterranean and DASH. So lowering the amount of meat, still has some fish. I argue with her that it's not the optimum diet, but it's so much better than the standard American diet that our patients are doing. We're in the middle of that trial. The preliminary data, that the pilot data that got it funded looked like you could actually not so much reverse, but slow down the progression of Alzheimer's disease. That's a worthy goal. I'd like to see improvement, and that would be speculation that someone would have to actually prove if plant-based nutrition could do that.
Good afternoon. I appreciate your lecture. My name is Stephen Carroll. I'm a general surgeon, but also do obesity surgery. And about 6 years ago, transitioned to prevention and plant-based stuff. I'm a graduate of Loma Linda, and the stuff that You know, this stuff is old. I'm from the class of '88, so back then this was common. What I would like to know, we do a lot of this on the weekends in an informal way. Almost we do about 40 health expos a year. How do you try and take this and make it a part of a practice? I'm not a primary care, but explain to me, and probably somebody on the docs you mentioned, how do you operationalize this in a practice environment?
So you got Rob Osfeld, you got a lot of people who are doing what I would like to see happen in Rush. Right now we have so many practitioners and we're doing it sort of one case at a time. We get a lot of referrals for prevention and we are stamping it out, but it's one patient at a time. You'd like to have big groups and retreat centers and that sort of thing. I think that's the approach that we're going to need to take, but I don't want to rule out, based on the randomized trials for sugar-sweetened beverages, I don't want to rule out that political will and passing laws about what's available, and food labeling is another one, so that people know what healthy choices are. Taking your SNAP program and say, yeah, you can have SNAP, you can have food stamps, but you can only buy healthy food with it. I mean, that sounds like it's too proscriptive, but there's a book called Nudge by Cass Sunstein, a friend of mine from the University of Chicago, I think he's at Harvard now. That whole idea of nudging people, that is, make a law that they have to do seatbelts. You save lives with those nudges, and so why not take on nutrition, something that is a worthy target?
And sadly, a plane is now waiting, so we will be we'll be having a few presentations. Thank you so much, Dr. Community. So first, we will have Forward Food present.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Tori Nang. I work with an organization called Forward Food. We're a nonprofit part of the Humane Society of the United States. We do free plant-based culinary trainings throughout the country at K-12 schools and colleges, military bases, businesses, correctional facilities, but also, of course, hospitals. For hospitals, our registered dietitians come and do an evidence-based presentation. We get into the kitchen, we cook recipes. We have a whole database of whole food plant-based recipes. We also have a compilation of whole food plant-based recipes that are no oil, no sugar, and no wheat. We don't need to take over your entire kitchen because we understand that hospitals never close. We can get into a conference room and do a 2-hour culinary training hands-on with cooks, chefs, registered dietitians. We try the recipes, we see which ones you'd like to menu for your patients or visitors, their families. We do offer continuing education units for those 2-hour trainings. They're completely free. We offer CEUs for RDs for cooks and chefs. If you'd like more information, my business cards are out here at a table right where you signed in, and I have a sign-up sheet if you'd like me to contact you for these free culinary plant-based trainings through Forward Food. Thank you.
Hi everyone, it's an absolute honor to be with all of you today. My name is Alexis Fox. I'm the CEO of Lighter. We are a mission-driven company that helps healthcare providers who are helping patients. I'm here today with two of my colleagues who are in the back, Tyler Curry, who is our Director of Healthcare Partnerships, and Kaylee Dice, who is our Director of Healthcare. Kaylee is an RD. She's on faculty of American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and she's also the author of the Plant-Based Quick Start Guide, which is ordered by the Palate, by the Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, who are all educating their patients on a plant-based diet. Kaylee and Tyler have been working with a wonderful, innovative group of healthcare providers from around the world to answer a question, a problem that many of you have right now or are likely going to have, which is answering the question for your patients, what do I eat? Right? So you've had a patient with heart disease who has now been convinced she should be eating better for her heart. You have a patient who is pre-diabetic, who wants to eat better because he wants to reverse his diabetes. The responsible question to the answer, what should I eat, really depends on that individual patient and his or her circumstances. So is she trying to lose 100 pounds or is she trying to gain weight? Is she cooking for a family of 5 with 2 picky eaters in the household? Or is he single and he's been microwaving his meals and eating takeout, right? The answer to that question is individual, and so Kaylee and Tyler have been working with healthcare providers to build meal planning technology that makes it easy for a patient to walk out of your office with a personalized meal plan, and we're also connected into grocery delivery. I'm going to quickly go through it, but rapidly, and then we're in the back and we'll be able to answer questions. So you can have a dashboard where you're able to monitor patient adherence and also add new patients. Patients answer questions like what's their appetite size, what kind of foods do they love, how many people are they cooking for, what kind of kitchen equipment do they have, et cetera, and rapidly we're able to present a meal plan for that patient that meets their lives and then also aligns with your nutrition philosophy for what they should be eating. It's connected to a grocery list and also grocery delivery. So if you have more questions, which I'm sure you will, we're in the back at a table out there. We're happy to answer them. Thank you.
How do we get the first slide up there?
Hold on 1 second.
Well, hello everyone, my name is Stacia Clinton and I'm a registered dietitian and director of the Healthy Food and Healthcare program at Healthcare Without Harm. And as we're getting these slides, there we go. All right, so for us, the health of food takes on a greater purpose than just nutrients. So I've spent time as a clinical nutrition manager and a food service director in hospitals, and I know that it's more than just changing a menu. It's about changing a culture where the menu, the programs, and the operations within the hospital come together to serve patients, staff, community, and the environment and where people live and where their health is determined. So these are the concepts that Healthcare Without Harm was founded on 22 years ago and has grown to a global network with innovation hubs throughout the region, including New York, and serves 1/3 of all hospitals in the US. We've set the sector benchmark since 2006 for food service operations in healthcare, helping hospitals to implement strategies, track and benchmark their progress towards some of these goals. In 2006, 57% of reporting hospitals noted they were already implementing strategies to reduce meat. But what happens when a trend changes, or the patients and staff are unable to access the healthy food that you're recommending through a plant-based diet? This is where our membership-based arm, Practice Green Health, helps hospitals to break down interdepartmental silos to meet the goals not only for your patients and staff, but also to connect them to wellness, sustainability initiatives, and others to create a more integrated, effective, cost-effective, and a long-term change. The hospitals in our network are revered as leaders, such as Boston Medical Center, featured in USA Today, Montefiore Medical Center, and the innovative work they're doing in the Bronx. And our physician network is an opportunity for clinicians to connect together about science-based issues such as plant-based menus. We've teamed up with the Culinary Institute of America and Harvard School of Public Health to put forward the first ever healthcare culinary contest, connecting hospital chefs with procurement and clinical staff to create plant-based meals. So I encourage you to consider exploring Practice Green Health membership. We have many members already in the room, but there's an opportunity to engage even deeper and to have recognition for your work by applying for our national awards program. And if you're interested in getting engaged more locally, contact us about an opportunity to work with your peers here in New York City around plant-based menuing. So we challenge you to engage with your peers to redefine the role that healthy food plays in hospitals.
Hi, I'm Rob Osfeld, a cardiologist at Montefiore Health System in the Bronx, and it is absolutely terrific to be with each of you here today. Like most of you, I went through medical school. I learned virtually nothing about nutrition. And it was only along the way that I came to learn about plant-based nutrition and see the incredible benefits that it has. So about 6 or 7 years ago, we started our cardiac wellness program with the goal of preventing and reversing disease with plant-based nutrition. I've been a cardiologist now for about 15 years, and outside of a medical emergency, like someone gets shot and has to be put back together again, I've never seen anything come close to the breadth and depth of benefits that a plant-based diet provides. We have an outpatient arm to our program where patients come in to see us. We weave plant-based nutrition into each visit, have handouts and various follow-ups for them. And from a physical perspective, from your hospital, if you build it, they will come. We have patients come to us in the Bronx well outside the catchment area that Montefiore would typically draw from. Patients have flown in from Oklahoma, Texas, California, Italy, because they're interested in plant-based nutrition, and many of them need testing, etc. We have an inpatient arm of our program. We've had the opportunity to work with food services and nutrition. We developed plant-based meals for inpatients, but that wasn't enough. That comes with a handout of education, and we thought we needed more. So now we also have Forks Over Knives, the incredible documentary film about nutrition and health, playing on continuous loop for free for patients in the hospital. And those meals that get delivered to the inpatients, they're also served in our cafeterias, and I'm told they sell out. And Forward Food, we work very closely with them, and they've been an incredible resource for our food services. We have an educational arm for our program where we get the opportunity to teach about it. Some of you may have heard about our conference coming up just in a week or so, the CME conference all about plant-based nutrition. Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams, Dr. McMacken, Dr. Williams, and many others will be there. I'd love to talk with you about it. We have a research aspect of our program as well. So it's been an incredible resource. And if anyone has questions, you can reach me here at that phone number or grab me this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a huge honor to be here. My name is Michelle McMacken, and I'm a primary care physician at New York City Health and Hospitals, Bellevue, where I am affectionately, well, hopefully affectionately known as the Vegetable MD because of my passion for promoting healthy eating. And I'm incredibly honored and excited to help launch the plant-based lifestyle medicine program at Bellevue. So our mission with this program is to help people make the transition to a healthier lifestyle, including adopting a whole foods, plant-based diet. And what we're really trying to do is address some of the root causes of the chronic conditions listed here, including type 2 diabetes, prediabetes, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, weight problems, and heart disease. So we all know that behavior change can be very hard. And to that end, we've put together really an all-star team of 4 plant-based physicians, a dietitian, and a health coach to provide personalized guidance and intensive support to people as they make the transition to a healthier diet. And we're hopeful that this model is something that can be spread. We can reach a lot of people and really educate folks and help them make a transition that can sometimes be difficult, as VP Adams alluded, if you're trying to do this completely on your own. So we'll be launching the program later this fall, and there's a number here on the screen as well as a flyer and frequently asked questions in your packet. I encourage you, if you know anyone, if you have patients, friends, family, anyone who might be interested, please encourage them to call the number and they can get an appointment or get more information if they'd like to learn more. So I want to end by thanking Borough President Adams for his incredible advocacy, and also thank the Deputy Mayor's Office as well as leadership at Health and Hospitals for their support, because without that, that would not be possible to start this program. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. I'm Louise Mervin, and I'm Director of Clinical Nutrition at New York Presbyterian Hospital. And again, so delighted to be here. You know, as I've told some of you, I'm an old hippie from Ann Arbor, and I grew up on Diet for a Small Planet. It's nice to see this coming back and getting the, I see some heads shaking, some of the recognition. You know, one of the things that we heard is they are so many and we are so few. So it really is going to take synergy to do this. And this past Nutrition Month, we did a whole program on whole food plant-based diet. And we did it with dietitians and doctors, as we know we need to, also including chefs. And in the middle you see Human Yagubzada. He's a cardiologist. at New York Presbyterian Hospital, and he has been our lightning rod for making sure that we're looking at whole food, plant-based nutrition. We also did the same program, a similar topic, at our West Campus. We streamed it across sites. We had unbelievable participation. People want to know and hear about this. Just yesterday, we met with one of our nephrologists, and he's saying he's got money for research, and he really wants to see that we're doing more about kidney disease and looking at whole food, plant-based nutrition. You know, we're not shy about borrowing. I think my friend Miriam Papo at Montefiore helped loan to me the education piece that they use for whole food, plant-based nutrition. We are happy to share with you anything that we're doing. We have to synergize with this. It really is going to take a village, and that means all of us. This is our piece. It's in your handout. If you want to get a copy of it, let us know. We also like to educate. We have a large dietetic internship program. We've got one of our dietetic interns with us today, and she's not only learning nutrition, but she's also very talented. And we're putting together our whole food plant-based cookbook, and it's called Meatless Every Day. I will also say at New York Presbyterian Hospital, we're on the bandwagon. We did adopt the Healthy Beverage Initiative a couple years ago with full support from our chief operating officers. We've implemented Meatless Monday. We even got a hold of our vending companies and made vending machines healthier, because really, where do a lot of our staff eat? In the vending machines. And then finally, in closing, an area that I'm so very proud of, and I have my colleague Kristen Matheson here, it's really been an effort of volunteerism to teach our medical students, and now we're moving into our residents, about food and nutrition. So we started a year ago a culinary medicine program. And we thought, why reinvent the wheel? We bought the license from Tulane, from Dr. Tim Harlan. It's been so well received. We're just starting our second elective this October, and we can't keep up with all of the medical students that want to join us. So it's really been a wonderful journey for us. Great to see the synergy here. And if you have any questions for us, please let us know after the program.
Thank you so much. Thanks to the presenters, and I think he led, Dr. Rowley was here from downstate. A great opportunity, and just, you know, two quick stories, because we want to get you out of here by 2, and I thank many of you who have stayed. One, a good friend, very well-known lobbyist in this city. She was suffering from seizures. She was going to close her multi-million-dollar practice because she was waking up in police precincts, hospitals, subway stations, and she could no longer carry on her business. She was suffering for about a year, and the doctors gave her a number of different medication, and it was just they were all unsuccessful. And I told her that I'm not a medical professional, but you should try plant-based. She went plant-based a year ago. She has not had another seizure since. Not another seizure. We don't know what this food does. Late 2016, I'm down in the lobby. We're doing our rollout for the breastfeeding room, lactation room. A woman comes in, she looks at me, she said, "You look different." And she looked at my poster, she said, "You dropped a lot of weight." And I said, "Yes, I was told I was diabetes, and I went to see a doctor in Ohio." She said, "Dr. Esselton." I said, "Yes." She said, "Let me tell you what happened. My husband had a massive heart attack. He died on an operating table. They brought him back to life. While he was in the emergency room, the recovery room, he picked up his phone and he typed, 'Find Dr. Esselton.' He got out of the hospital, went to see his cardiologist. He told his cardiologist, 'I would like to reverse my condition.' The cardiologist said, 'It is what it is. You can't do anything for your clogged arteries at this time. You're going to be on medication the rest of your life.' And he went to see and visited Dr. Esselstyn like I did, and like Bill Clinton did, who's also a vegan. And after a year of seeing the doctor, the cardiologist looked over his x-ray or whatever you cardiologists do, and he saw that his arteries open. So the cardiologist said, can you give me the number to that doctor? I have to go in for a stent, and I don't want to. We have to change this. And the question that was raised earlier by the surgeon of how do we make it part of the new practice, Dan is answering that. But Dan is putting the money up to start a medical journal that talks about reversal. Imagine that. We do not have a journal in medicine that talks about reversal. And now we're finally opened the door. So how do we get our schools involved, our religious institutions involved, our policymakers involved, and how do you tell us how to do this correctly? Too many people are making policies on healthcare practices that never spent one day in medical school. We need to hear from you. The policy and the partnership must be healthcare professionals who are on the ground, those of us who are legislators who are implementing the practices, our teachers who are educating our children. How do we use our rooftops to grow fresh fruits and vegetables, to start teaching our children how they can actually solve the problem of food deserts like we're doing with Democracy Academy, teaching the children how to grow fresh fruits and vegetables on new technology, and then going to public housing to give it and partner with those who are living in NYCHA so they can have that partnership. How do we start the process of turning this around? And this is day one. Engaging like this and communicating with each other and having Brooklyn and New York lead the way. So I thank you. I know your schedules are busy. You sat through the entire presentation and remain here to hear it through. It really speaks volume of your commitment to raising healthy children and families in the city of New York. We can do it here in the borough of Brooklyn. The way goes Brooklyn goes New York. The way goes New York goes the country. The way goes the country goes the globe. Thank you.